main event of today, our speakers. Our first speaker is Janet Breese from our own SJII International. Janet enjoys reading, debating, MUN, and speaking as her friend, I can assure you of her profound love for talking. Today, she has lined up for you a speech titled Care, through which she wishes to talk about how her experience of growing up with a special needs and nonverbal brother has shaped her approach to the world and ultimately her dreams. She wants to explore the butterfly effect through how her small everyday interactions with her brother have created for her a bigger drive for empowerment, to speak for the unspoken. There's no doubt this is a lesson we can all take to heart. Without further ado, we welcome Janet to the stage.
Hi, my name is Janet. I'm 16 years old, and the name of the speech I'll be giving today is called Care. Care is my story about growing up with a non-verbal special needs brother, and who has taught me the importance of caring. The phrase, pick your battles, isn't foreign to many today. We are told to pick our battles and stand down because it might not be worth it, but I disagree. I disagree that it is acceptable and expected to allow someone to say something that violates the fabric of your moral values, and then to not start a fight. The voice that John is deprived of, just like many around the world who are silenced today, has made me appreciate the voice that I have. Today, I will try my best to tell John's story and how my lifelong companionship with him has profoundly impacted my beliefs and passion. If there's one thing anyone could tell you about me, it's that I love to talk. Ever since I was a little girl, I could babble on for hours and hours about the most trivial topics, such as why pink is the best color and why Harry Potter was the best universe ever created. This is carried out into my teenage years into more serious matters such as tirades on feminism and even the struggles of the Ivy diploma. If given a chance, I would talk to anyone about anything, so you can only imagine what my parents are bombarded with on a daily basis. However, the one person who seemed the most accessible to me at the time, as we were only 15 months apart, was my brother John. But whenever I tried to talk to John, he would never respond, at least not verbally. It would always end the same with no surprises. Unfocused gazing and his monotonous humming. I didn't want to understand why he was away at this time. Why was the sole extension of myself the only person who ever shut me out? Everyone else seemed to entertain my meaningless questions and the strong opinions I held as a toddler, so why wouldn't he? One of my countless attempts to connect with him that I seem to remember strongly and that seems to be embedded in my mind forever was when I tried to reach him. My storybooks never failed to litter the floors in our house, so as a big sister, it only seemed natural that I would try to reach him. Even though I tried my absolute best to try and reach him because I truly did care, he didn't seem to care, which broke my heart at the time. He would always get up and wander away, having me hurt and confused about what I did to bore and offend him. To a 4-year-old, nothing is particularly significant besides Barney and Elmo. Still, having a sibling who seemed to do everything in his power to avoid you felt spirit-crushing. Because honestly, I did care. I cared about connecting with him and being able to play with him, but most importantly, I feared being alone. And that was one of the many small childhood memories I had with my brother John who have shaped me into a person who I am today. But what I interpreted as a lack of interest back then in getting to know me was eventually offset by my parents telling me the truth. They told me that John did not choose to be this way, but that it was forced upon him. I discovered that when he was a day old, he had life-saving emergency surgery for his heart, which may have contributed to his diagnosis of autism at just 3 years old. Unfortunately, my brother is on the low functioning side of the autism spectrum, which means he can do minimal things independently and is prevented from doing elementary tasks such as talking. Back then, I could never understand why he ever uttered a word. After all, was it being able to talk about life? How could you tell people what you thought, what you wanted, but most importantly needed, if you couldn't use your voice to articulate your hopes, dreams, and aspirations? It's hard to convey the feeling of seeing a loved one struggle. It's hard to know that you're fortunate enough and have the independence to live your life how you wish, not at the mercy of others. It's challenging and almost selfish to think that your dreams and hopes might be affected by a sick sibling who can do nothing about it. But I'll tell you that nothing is comparable to the lingering fear, the pain of dreading the possibility that your younger sibling may not go to your funeral, but you will go to his instead. If I'm being honest with you, I've put off writing and planning this speech for a very long time. Writing this speech has forced me to examine why I do what I do, but time has not allowed me to dwell on my fears of giving this speech. Time marches on, regardless of how ready we are to confront the more giant demons we will later face. But time has ultimately made me care. The time that I've had with my brother has allowed me to embrace his innocence, his happiness, and the love that we have for each other. Despite the seemingly biggest obstacles of all, his inability to talk and his autism, we weren't robbed of a close relationship. We still spend time together, whether that is sitting next to each other whilst we watch TV or getting our mouths messy while we eat my mom's homemade brownies. Even though we can't do normal things that siblings do, such as playing video games together or going to the cinema, nothing prevents us from loving and caring each other, just like a normal sibling relationship. I would lie if my being outspoken is wholly attributable to wanting to sound informed and generally being opinionated. Don't get me wrong, I often get told to shut up. Whether that's by an exasperated friend or by my parents who are tired of my incoherent political rants, I would say, if not confidently ascertain, that I am so outspoken that it borders on being zealous sometimes, because I have witnessed the consequences of being silenced. Though John's silence is not caused by violence, fear, or intimidation, but by many unexplainable medical occurrences, he is not voluntarily silent. John's well-being and health are contingent on the ability of his loved ones to decipher his gestures and ununderstandable language to cater to his needs. Sometimes my independence to make the most insignificant daily decisions, I feel, teases John's dependence on us to help him fulfill his rudimentary tasks. I think that it would be grossly inaccurate and harmful to place John and kids like him in a similar situation on the same level of suffering of the children that we're currently seeing around the world. John wakes up daily in a home with food, water, and shelter. Even though he doesn't carry the dread, the consuming fear that his family could be killed at any moment, leaving him alone, he is still subject to the will of others to do what's in his best interest. Being John's sister hasn't just taught me the importance of kindness and how I am obligated to transfer the empathy I've developed through being his sister into my duty as a human being. The duty I have as a human is to care. Just as much as I do, you all are responsible for caring about what is happening to others, regardless of who we pray to, who we choose to love, the color of our skin, or our political affiliations. Having fancy declarations such as the Human Rights Charter or the Geneva Convention is fruitless and purely symbolic if we do nothing to enforce this, if we stay silent. Throughout history, we spot the recurrent theme of acceptance and surrender to the strife and suffering of others around the globe. Whether that is the acceptance that this is just how life is, or fleeting sympathy for those who emerge from their crumbling homes, crusted with blood and debris, we sigh and flick to the following TV channel, grateful that that is not us. The theme of this event, the butterfly effect, is one that I can strongly resonate with. The life I lead by having and caring for a special needs brother every day hasn't just exposed me to the privilege that I have, but it has forced me to acknowledge and act upon it. I'm sure that if not most all of you are aware of the current news cycles and the world's anger. Anger that something so incomprehensibly horrible could happen to others, but at the same time, rage and frustration at the fact that so many of us are passive to the suffering of others. I want to reassure you that I'm not trying to embed some political agenda into you or an uprising against the government, which I strongly discourage. What I do want to tell you is why you should care. Recently, I was reprimanded for speaking up against the war crimes in the Gaza Strip because they were deemed offensive and bigoted. Though it's essential to have compassion and empathy when discussing pain that hurts real people, I will not back down from speaking, not because I can, but because I must not back down. I've recently been listening to one of my favorite songs, Zombie by the Cranberries. To quote Zombie, another mother's breaking heart takes over when the violence causes silence. John's silence was not caused by violence, yet my mother's broken heart did take over. The never-ending pain my parents felt during the first 2 months of John's life when he was in the ICU is something that I will never forget. But one thing that John could not control, but that did happen to help save his life, was geography. Maybe it was his lucky stars, but he was blessed to be born in Singapore, a first world country with exceptional hospitals that do not have to fear about the countless babies they are housing that will be hurt and bombed in the ICU because their hospital will be hurt in the name of freedom fighting. This is similar. The privilege that we have and the opportunities that we have is ultimately due to where we live. As human beings, we are not made to lament and regret when we tell our grandchildren years from now about what we could have, would have, and should have done to oppose hatred. To quote Martin Luther King, I have a dream. I have a dream that we do not have to march down the streets every 50 years, left and right, to scream for the rights we deserve. I dream that we learn from our mistakes and care because it's not fair if we don't. Ultimately, we are made to use the voices we have for those who cannot speak. My name is Janet, and I swear that